today. He's back in himself. He has the distance. What has he got to see? Touches the neutral. Touches the neutral. They've done it. Nobody here will let it finish today.
Hello everyone and welcome. Connacht run an excellent nursery programme and I have witnessed it on many occasions. So I have asked Damien Coleman, who is the provincial hurling manager over in Connacht, to share and discuss some of the values and the guidelines that go to make up that programme. There are two parts to every nursery. I suppose there's the behind the scenes, the values and how to go about things, and then there's the practical on the field. So this presentation is looking at part one, which is looking at those values, and it will be followed on another occasion with part two, which will be more practical examples. So Damien, you're very welcome, and thanks for coming on board and taking the time to share some of your thoughts and ideas with us.
Thanks very much, Martin. We in Connacht GA are delighted to be part of the programme. But before we just start the slideshow there, Martin, I just want to recognise the contribution there of Paddy Butler. We borrowed some of his slides, and who better to borrow slides in a child context only from Paddy, who's an expert in this area. So the whole theme of the presentation tonight will be developing confident, competent children. And the confident part is the psychological, and the competent part is the physical. And our job as coaches of children in our fields is, getting their confidence levels up and getting their ability levels up. So we'll be referring back to the confident, competent children sentence there over the duration of the presentation. So on this slide here we have the offerings that the GA have for child on the left, the youth offerings in a games development context in the middle, and the adult offerings along the right hand side. So just for the benefit of everybody on the call tonight, we will be concentrating on the ABCs part, the acquiring bilateral coordination. They have a ball programme, it's a nursery programme, and it's based around the developing agility, balance and coordination through the game. So our job again as children's coaches are to develop the little child's hands and feet, and the aim would be that by the age of 12 that all children would be flying. Now we all know that there's a lot of work goes into this, and before they fly they must get their feet under them. So again we're referring back to the nursery programme, developing the little child's hands and developing the little child's feet through activities. So we have a graphic here for coaches based around creating the optimum learning environment. And I'd just like to bring you in on this one, Martin. What are you seeing here as a coach?
Well, Damien, I suppose, as it says there, the environment. It's all about the environment. If people want to learn, if it's in the school, the setting has to be, I suppose, somewhere where the children like to be. The word that jumps out at me there is encouragement. Encouragement and instruction down there in the bottom, but in particular encouragement. Praise and encouragement always go down well, and that's without going over the top. There's no point in giving out praise for the sake of it, but it's very, very important that when children or even adults are doing things and doing their best, that they get that little bit of encouragement. And I've never seen anybody play well that has been insulted. So encouragement is my word out of that clip, Damien.
Very good. And I'd just like to refer to the yellow there, Martin, if you can just go back for a second. Just where the body and brain is sufficiently developed. I think it's very important that children's coaches don't move a thing on if the child hasn't learnt or if the child isn't ready. And there's a big sentence there that we all need to adopt, is go back and meet the child where the child is at. So when you're coaching 20 children or 25 or whatever your number is, not every child is at the same ability level. So we've got to go back and challenge and assist the bottom third children who need a little bit more help, the middle third children who need a little bit more help. And the top third children might be very ready and very able to move on. But we've got to be cognizant of the fact that there's another 2/3 there that need a little bit more challenge and a little bit more help. So, Martin, what are you seeing here?
Well, Tammy, I'm seeing somewhere that I wouldn't like to be. I suppose I'm seeing Kilkenny going up to Salt Hill there. No, seriously, again, you're looking at the safe environment, really, and as adults, we forget sometimes what it looks like from a child's perspective. And even, in school, a little child of 4 or 5, school is daunting to them. And it's the very, very same then when they come down to the hurling field. It's daunting, and they must feel safe. If they don't feel safe, and if they don't trust everybody that's around that environment, then they're probably not going to come down at all, but they certainly won't progress.
Yeah, and our job again, in this area is to create safe environments which are rich in learning and lots of opportunity to learn. So yeah, very good. So look, just on this slide, I'd ask everybody to have a good look at it, because there's a fair bit of information in here backed up by sports science, which is always factual as opposed to being subjective information. So the years of age there along the top, and the opportunities or windows of opportunity to come in there in a development context with the child. The one that stands out for me there, Martin, is speed. So between the age of 7 and 8, we've got a big window of opportunity to develop footfall speed. Now this is the Michael Flatley speed as opposed to the Usain Bolt 100-meter sprinting. So, little routines there, jumping over the hurley, high knees. How many high knees and toe taps can you get in 30 seconds standing on the spot? These are the little routines there that we're talking about. But again, 7, 8-year-olds, this is an opportunity for them. The whole area then of suppleness between the ages of 6 and 10. Now, we're not talking about static stretching here in a child, but we are talking about squatting and lunging and some of the practical functional exercises there that we could build into our sessions. So, there's a good bit of information there, and I'd just like to encourage coaches to take a good picture of that in their heads and see where it fit in there with their age groups into their coaching sessions. The outcome here is that by the age of 12, the range of motion and the style of motion is more or less set for life. And that's a big stat as well, to say that after 12 years of age, you're in remedial, whatever you haven't got in these contexts physically, you're playing catch up. So again, we're saying that it's better to go back and meet the child at these various age groups with what's advised there. Have you anything to add to that there, Martin?
Yeah, I suppose it's a kind of scary in ways, Damien, when you see it in front of you there. And a lot of people, they might have thought about it, that by the age of 12, it's nearly saying there you either have it or you haven't it by 12. And it mightn't be entirely true, but, if you think of a child, if you think of a baby, they're born, and 3 years later, 4 years later, to have a full language. Now, if you were 20 or 35 or 30 and you were given 3 years to learn a full language, I don't think you'd do it. So, when you look at something, an example like that, maybe people realise that we do develop in the early years at a much greater pace than in later years. So all the more reason to give the children the opportunity to be as good as they can be.
Very good. So look at, again, this is an important slide as well for coaches to grasp. So the 6 how to coach skills, because the first thing we need to know in a coaching context is the how to coach. And then the second part of it is to coach, which is the content. But if we don't have these 6 built into our armoury, I think we're really neglecting the child that comes there religiously to your sessions 2 or 3 times a week. The first one there is building rapport. It's a people's business. We've got to connect to the person. We've got to show empathy, first name basis. Your observation role there, you're paying attention. Our job here is to see the child doing something good and praise them. Sometimes we think our job as a coach is constantly critiquing, improving. But I would like us to reverse that thinking now. And in your observation role, if you just go to the field on a given night and just trial it and keep catching the child doing something good and move in then with your intervention of praise. Do you want to take on 1 or 2 more of those, Martin?
Yeah, well, I suppose it comes back to with any players that you're coaching, the players have to know what you want. And, if it comes to an individual skill, it mightn't be just enough to say something. To demonstrate it, or get somebody else to demonstrate it, show them what you want. And then I think it's hugely important when learning a skill is to get it right first, well, to see it first, maybe see how it's done properly, and then practice it. Get it right first, even if it's in slow motion. Supposing it was learning how to block or how to hook, so you might practice it in slow motion. The same with striking. Then get it a bit faster, build up to speed, and then when you have it fast, unopposed, I suppose you try that little skill then under a bit of pressure. And that's kind of what's coming across there. Demonstrate, get a competent player to do it.
Very good. I might just go back there for a second, Martin, if you don't mind.
No problem,
just the explanation part there. We need to be more precise in our language. So go in with a little key sentence to improve the child and hold back on the explanation until you're ready to go in with your little key sentence. Sometimes stuff comes out that shouldn't come out, and then it confuses the whole thing more. So I'd be saying, say less until you're ready to go in with your sentence. And then the generating feedback. It's vitally important that in a child context, that all of that feedback would be positive. Because again, that's linked with building rapport. They're both in blue. Listening to the players is another one. If we could become more questioning of children as opposed to barking out orders. So I asked the little child, how did they feel about that strike? Geez, that was a lovely catch. How did you feel? What did you do right? And they will come up with the little answers, and this is built in then as automatic in the child forever. So the how to coach skills shouldn't be glossed over. It's a key part to coaching, whether you're coaching children, youths or adults. But look at it's there now tonight, and hopefully people will take on those 6 and build them into their coaching repertoire.
Yeah, I suppose, Damien, it's about getting down to the child's level, really. And you have hurlers maybe there, and they're after being top hurlers, and they don't think like a child. When they get married then and they have a little child, then they start to understand. Even speaking to a baby, speaking to a 1 or a 2-year-old, we normally don't do it the same way as we speak to an adult. So that's what I would see as part of your nursery program there, that you're teaching maybe very, very competent people about going right back to when they were 4 years of age or 5 years of age.
Very good. Here we have a model, and it's an important one for coaches as well to understand. It's the total playing performance model, oxygen from within. So you have 3 T's and 3 P's, and the technical proficiency there is the how to hook, how to block, how to catch. Moving down along there, the left end tactical is the little decision making that you have to build in with the technical. And then it's a team play sport. So the 3 T's there, the technical, tactical, team play, are important knowledge for all coaches. The 3 P's then are the physical fitness, and the playing facts or participant feedback, married together there with the psychological focus. So what I'd be saying, to be quite honest, from the model, all of the physical fitness there in the child context is done through the little activities and the running and the activity. There's nothing separate from the game there. The little hurley, the little bean bag or bean ball or ball is part of the exercise continuously. And the psychological focus is the happy player. So if your coaching sessions are built in such a way that the little child wants to come back to them, that's the happy player, intrinsically motivated to be where you are, to be at your sessions, really enthused about the whole night's training. So building sessions that have learning and building sessions that have happiness for the player, they're key. And just the last part of it there, the playing facts or the participant feedback. Again, as coaches, we need to be questioning the little children as opposed to giving them all the answers. So ask them how they feel, ask them how that shot felt. They scored a goal, how did that feel? Did you have a great strike? What part of the hurley did you strike the ball with that time? So this is what we need to be as child coaches, as opposed to coming with all the answers. Because if you're coming with all the answers, you're going away with all the answers as well, and the little child isn't learning a whole lot. So I think we've probably enough time spent on that one there, but there's a lot in that one, Martin, and it's important to include it even in a child context, the 3 T's and the 3 P's.
Yeah. Well, that's a very strong graphic, Damien, and people maybe that have been on other courses will note that that graphic probably forms the basis for more advanced courses, your foundation course, your level 1 course, your level 2 course. So there's quite a lot in it. So we'll move on here anyway to the next one, Damien.
Very good. So look at we're down to the nuts and bolts here, the fundamental movement skills. So when you go to the field and you're planned for your night or a course of coaching sessions, have your little routines built in: agility, balance, coordination and speed. And again, the speed we're talking here in the child is the footfall speed. We're not talking about how fast they can run a 50 metres in. So it's off the mark, over 2 metres, 3 metres. It's footfall speed, high knees. So I think you have a little video there to back it up here now, Martin. Next, have you?
Yeah, there's one coming up now, Damien. But again, I suppose, looking at those headings there, a lot of us, we don't think about those things. We take them for granted. And, agility, balance, coordination, for example. If you don't have those things, you're not going to be as good as you might like to be in sport. And I always look at agility. And if you picture maybe an adult player, and we've often heard the words, there's such a guy can turn in a sixpence. Tidy footwork. Your own Ollie Canning was one great example. No matter how many lads were around him, Ollie would get out of there because he's very, very good on the feet. But then you'd often see another player and might have the ball, but would need 100 yards to turn. So these little things are learned at a very, very young age, and it is important, I suppose, that your new coaches are aware of those things. So we'll move on here now. We have a couple of little clips mixed into the presentation here, just to give some idea of some of the little activities maybe that the coaches might use with their players.
Mark a grid and place lots of obstacles or domes inside the grid. Also place a number of hoops. Divide the players into 4 groups. Line up one group at each side of the grid. Each player has a ball. The domes act as mines, which the players must dodge as they travel from one side of the grid to the other. The players must also bounce the ball in any hoop they pass as they navigate the minefield. Gradually, increase the number of teams crossing the grid at the same time so that eventually all 4 teams are navigating the minefield.
Okay, Damien.
Yeah, so look, just on that one there, Martin, that's a little agility routine, but is there balance in it? Yes, there is. And is there coordination in it? Yes, there is. So all of these models are little integrated models. None of the little agility, balance, coordination, or what we're going to do now on the running, jumping and throwing, they shouldn't be done in isolation. So we just need to keep that in mind there as well. So further fundamental movement skills there are...
Yeah, I might just mention there, Damien, while it's in my head, and I'm coming across it quite a lot, where so many clubs now in their nursery they have dual nurseries where you have the football and the hurling mixed in. You might have, especially if they use the stations, they might have 5 little hurling routines and 5 football and 5, I suppose, generic ones. And it's it all benefits the child coming through and gives them the opportunity to be good at both sports.
Good. So these are the athletic movement skills now under the fundamental movement skills, the running, your jumping and throwing. And again, the running part, get the little child there to have high knees and have their upper body, straight, sitting back for spinal stability. The hip flex there to 90. Little jumping routines there. Start off on 1 foot, get onto 2 feet, jumping for height, jumping for length, jumping backwards and forwards. These are all very simple little routines that if we have them, an awareness of them in our heads as child coaches, it's easy to set up these little activities. You can make them up yourself once you have a grasp of what you should be doing. And then the last one, the throwing, it's a precursor to the hand pass. So, we don't start teaching a child how to do a hand pass. We first have to go back and meet the child where the child is at and teach them how to throw accurately and how to have socialization and team play in their throwing. And then eventually they can throw up that ball and they can palm it. So they're the running, jumping and throwing parts to the physical literacy to build onto the agility, balance and coordination parts.
Yeah, I suppose we have to remember as well, Damien, that Ireland has changed. I suppose when you were growing up and I was growing up, everybody was out around climbing trees and fooling around, and you were learning these things unknown to yourself. But life has changed for a lot of youngsters now, and they're not getting the opportunity maybe to climb trees and to cross rivers and balance on stones. So we have to be mindful of that then, that we're looking at these areas and making sure that they're getting their practice. So here's another little clip now again, just to emphasize some of those points we're making. And again, just to mention that there are so many resources on your own Connacht website and so many more on learning.ga, the main GA website, that if people take the time to go in there, you're going to get so many ideas. We're just giving you 1 or 2 or 3 here just to give you a taste.
This fun game is designed to improve the player's ability to perform the chest catch under pressure. Divide the group into teams of 6 to 8 players. Team A forms a circle with a distance of 3 meters between each player. Team B lines up in single file behind a cone outside the circle. The first player in Team B runs around the outside of the circle, while the players in the circle throw the ball from one to another in a clockwise direction. When the first player completes the circle, he tags the second player, who repeats the exercise. The players in the circle count the number of successful chest catches completed before the last player in Team B completes their run. Both teams then swap positions. The team with the most chest catches is the winner.
Great. The last part of the physical literacy fundamental movement skills are the GA specific ones. So now we need to start building our house and developing the catching. Now, I'll go back again and meet the child where the child is at. If you're in the bottom third, you might need to be catching bean bags or softballs. Maybe the top third children might be able to do the same routine, but they might be using little smart or quick touch litters. So you again have to decide all this and know who's able to do what, and then go back and challenge and assist. The whole passing end of it here is for socialization, and that feeds into team play at a later stage. So the kicking then is the football part, dominant foot or both feet, and the striking is the hurling part, dominant side or both sides. So that makes up the CPKS part of the fundamental movement skills.
Yeah, you put your finger on it there, Damien. With learning at your own level, which I think is hugely important, whether it's a 4-year-old or a 24-year-old. In order to learn, I suppose you have to be challenged a little bit, but not too much. If you're in a group there where everybody is just way ahead of you, you're not going to learn too much. if you're in a group where you're miles ahead of everybody else, you probably won't learn either. So, at nursery level, it's quite easy to group children at their own level and move them along through the various skills. So here's a little exercise coming up here now, which is working on what you were mentioning there, throwing, which again is leading into the hand pass eventually.
This exercise challenges players to roll the ball to hit and knock the target. Use a big ball and a two-handed technique to begin, before progressing to a one-handed technique with a smaller ball.
Okay, so as coaches here now, we have a lovely little graphic there. It builds an image into your head of what your job is. So picture building a house. So at the foundation here is your agility, balance, coordination and speed. So we've done the ABCs there. Now you're putting up the walls and you're building in running, jumping and throwing on top of your foundation. The next part of the house then you put on the roof, and this is your GS specific exercises. You're catching, you're passing, you're kicking and you're striking. Now you're putting in your door. So your door is the games, and games is the key to the children's hearts. Every child comes to the field every night to play games. Do we give them games? Do we give them games all of the time, or is it only some of the time? We should be more top heavy on games. Now you're putting in your windows and, let in the light and let in the fun. And the games then essential, the door and the windows or the games are essential to the fun. And then the last part of the house is you, the heart or the fire, and you're driving the whole lot. And you're warm and you're approachable and you're friendly, and these are characteristics there that you need to be as a coach. So that's a nice little visual there for coaches, and it definitely works for me, and I think it works for most, to be fair. I need the feedback we've got on that one. So what I would be saying here, Martin, is a lot of coaches in the nursery context, and we could spend the whole night on this slide, to be fair, but a lot of coaches in the nursery context, they put on the roof before they have the foundation or the walls up. Would you see that, Martin, in your travels?
Yeah, just what's the RJT again there, Damien?
Yeah, the RJT there, the walls are the running, jumping and throwing exercises.
Okay. Yeah, no, sure, super really. I haven't seen it before, and when you take a few moments to look at it there, again, I'm looking, agility to me is a big one. Agility, we just if you look at some of the smaller players over the years that have actually been so good in Croke Park, and how did they do it? Because they're unbelievably agile. So there's quite a lot in that, and I think, as you said, it's a, whatever you call it, an infographic or a picture. A picture paints 1,000 words. And we do, yeah. I suppose you've asked me the question there. Some people do try and put the roof on first. As I often say, the game, of course, is most important, but you can't play the game unless you have the skills. And how do you learn the skills? By working a few drills. But then to get the whole mixture and get the proper blend and get the proper balance is what it's all about. So super graphic there, Damien.
And just starting on that before we leave it, we had a lot of success in our club there, Portumna, over a 10-year period, and we had lots of lads who hurled in Croke Park. And when you show one or two of the dads now who are back coaching in nursery in our club, and these lads that hurled at a high level, and when they get that visual, they sort of get a big understanding of what their job is. Because before, they would be just going and to the field. They were brilliant hurlers, but they weren't coaches. Now they're coaches. And the first thing to start with would be putting on the roof. But when you explain it in sort of a visual that way, people get a better understanding of what their job is. The house won't stand too well, Martin, if the roof is the only thing that goes up at the start. So just to share that there, learning is for everybody.
Yeah, and I think, Damien, I often said maybe some of the best coaches could be men or ladies that actually couldn't hurl at all, because when you can't play the game or you find it very hard, Well, then you understand how difficult it is. You know, some people that find it natural, they don't understand that it can be quite daunting to throw a ball up and hit it with a hurl. If it can't be easy, you know, so be it. But if you had difficulty with it growing up yourself, well, then you will understand how difficult it can be for some children. And yeah, that's coming back to people often, I suppose, fear getting into hurling coaching because maybe they weren't there to play the game. And I would say it's probably an advantage in some ways if you weren't much good at it, because you will then possibly be a better coach, especially with children, because you'll understand how hard it is to perform some of the skills.
Very good. So these are learning principles there taken from the primary PE curriculum. Martin, you're a former principal there for a number of years in Kilkenny. I might let you talk out these ones.
Damien, you're putting me on the spot there now. I actually never saw them. The primary PE curriculum, I never saw, Damien.
You didn't open that book, Martin, did you not?
I didn't open that page, Damien. Our PE curriculum was at 11 o'clock, the small break, you were pucking against the wall. And for the big break, then you were out playing the mini game. So I suppose that fits in there somewhere. Children active agents in their own learning, yeah. Put them out there in the field or put them out in the garden and let them play away, and I think they'll learn themselves. But yeah, I suppose it's like, most courses you go on is about breaking it down and looking at it. Language is important. You know, the social and emotional dimensions, of course they are, because at the end of the day, hurling is a team sport. And if you're not able to get on with your colleagues, well then it's just not going to work. Collaborative learning, again, key to it. And without a doubt, individual difference. That's hugely important. And again, I would never stifle a bit of flair. I love the player that you just don't know what they're going to do sometimes. Okay, I don't mean the player at full back that's going to put the ball back in his own goals. But I like to see a player there maybe that's 30 or 40 yards out sometimes and sees a gap in the goals and have a go for it. So we should encourage that, Damien.
Yeah, we had a lad in our club, Damien, and Damien hardly knew what he was going to do next when he had the ball, so it was very hard to coach him what to do next. So that individual difference in flair, that was something I always put opposite of Damien Hayes. Yeah,
I was looking recently there at Paul Flynn there in the Munster final of 2004, and you know he stood up to a free there. I don't know, I think maybe it was 30, 40 yards out, and could see him having a little look, and next minute, bang, top corner. You know, you couldn't buy that kind of flair.
So here, Martin, we have brain pruning. Again, the sports science backs it up. Around 8 years of age, parts of the brain that have not been used are pruned out. So what we're advising there, again from a sports science point of view, is that the fundamental movement skills program should be well advanced by 8. So we should be doing all the right content in the what to coach, and then build in your how to coach skills that we've already went through here in this presentation, and try in some way have it automatic in the child, even at this young age. So coaching for character, I'd like you to take a second here now and read through that yourselves. I feel this is a very important slide. If you could take the words in yellow there and build them into your armoury: courageous, disciplined, fair, honest, humble, and wise. But it's an important one. You know, it matters what sort of human beings we are, and it matters what sort of people our children become. And you're the role model, and they go to the field and they hang on every word you say. So, you know, we've got to be really genuine back, and we've got to be really passionately attentive to the child. So would you have anything else to add on that one there, Martin? I just feel it's an important one as well.
Yeah, just again, I suppose, you know, you have them there in yellow, Damien. They're values really, and they're certainly values that are needed if you're going to be part of a team. Courageous, without a doubt. Discipline is a big one, you know, and discipline is not just not fouling. Discipline is the ability to stay going when the pressure is on. So fair, of course, and honest, humble, wise. You know, you could keep writing up words there, but I think coaches sometimes they like to hang on to a couple of words like those, and I would look on them as being values. And you know, if they never win a game in their lives, they're learning these things, they're learning these values when they go down to the hurling field or any field, the football field, any sporting field. Youngsters are learning these things and they're going to bring them into their lives later on, whether it's in workplace or in life in general. So certainly words worth noting.
Good. So look at again now as a coach, what people must do to get into the child's world. We're going to put up a number of words here, and I'd like you to go through them here yourself and take a moment. And where are you out of 10 on those words? Is there some you use? Do you know, have you got them all? Is there some that you need to build into your own mindset now for future coaching sessions? You know, do you accept children's mistakes? Do you acknowledge their efforts? Now, I think the acknowledging their efforts is an important one. As a child coach, I'd like to have the philosophy that you catch the child doing something good and go in with the intervention of praise all the time. Because, you know, again, the science tells us that 5 positives to 1 negative, the child will flourish. It also tells us that 3 positives to 1 negative, the child will survive. And then the 1 positive to 1 negative, the child languishes. So where are we on that? We've got to be more conscious of acknowledging efforts, be kind, be good-humoured. Are there any words there, Martin, that, you know, jump out at you?
Well, I was going to say, Damien, if coaches could, if they took home nothing else tonight, well, actually, they're already home, so they won't be taking it home. But you know what I mean? If they took on board what's on that slide and nothing else, I think it would be it'd be a well-spent hour. And, you know, just looking at him, it's as relevant to an inter-county coach stroke manager as it is to an under 4 or under 5 or under 6 coach manager. All of those values are so important. It's nearly like looking in a mirror, and it might be no harm maybe if coaches that are in the game for a while would ask themselves, you know, as you said, how would I rate out of 10 on those? So again, we got to keep asking ourselves these questions, because sometimes we get a little bit complacent and you know, teach me skills. You know, maybe we're just going down to the field and expecting everything to happen. So I won't dwell on it any longer, but again, an excellent graphic, Damien.
Yeah, I think it's key for coaches, Martin, yeah. Just this one here, again, just statistically, it's important to get a little bit more information like this, that, you know, connection in the child. 97% of children are connected to their coach or teacher up to 2nd class. So is that 7 to 8-year-olds? This connection happens when the child's needs, which are stimulation, attention and challenge, are not met. So what are you doing to maintain the stimulation in the child during the session, their attention, and are you giving them appropriate challenge? And again, as adult human beings, you know, we carry a lot of what we did during that day into the evening. So it's important to park at the gate before you meet the kids. Whatever sort of a day you had, whether it was positive or negative, it's parked, and you need to turn on the smiles and you need to be passionately present to the children for the next hour, because the child will feel and will know if you aren't this person to him or her. So, you know, I think there's a big sentence there in the 97% of children being connected around 7 or 8, but then disconnection happens if you don't meet the 3 words that we're just after going through there.
Yeah, sometimes we don't realise, Damien, the influence we have on others, in particular children. And, you know, adults, as you say there, a teacher, if it's in school, or the coach, if it's down in the hurling field, have a huge influence on youngsters. You know, the youngster goes home, and if Mikey is the coach, well, Mikey knows everything, and Mikey's word is final. So we need to realise that in our behaviour, I suppose, and in our demeanour and in what we're passing on. That, you know, what you're telling that child is gospel. No matter what his mother or father says what Johnny the coach told them is gospel. So you need to realise that when you're on the field.
Very good. And the whole idea here around cooperative games, again, this is important information for the children's coach. Only 20% of children can learn skills in a cooperative world. 80% need a cooperation world to learn and thrive. So 20% of children can only learn skills in a competitive world. Are our coaching sessions 100% competitive? Are we always moving on with the best? Do we forget about the bottom third and middle third child? You know, the top third child makes us feel good about ourselves as coaches, and they're able to do what we ask. But our job is 100% of the children, 100% of the time. So again, cooperation games are the philosophical and pedagogical pillars that make games-based coaching a success. We have a quote here from the great Dalai Lama: cooperation comes from friendship, friendship comes from trust, and trust comes from kind-heartedness.
That's very good, Damien. Dalai Lama, that fellow heard for Hortumla, or who was he?
I'm fairly sure it's down around Castle Comer somewhere, Martin.
Yeah, what was his attitude to the hooking and blocking?
I'm not too sure. I never got to quiz him.
Dalai Lama, very good. Anyway, we'll move on. We have another little clip coming up here now, Damien, which I suppose, in my view, is probably the most important clip of the night. But we'll have a look at it. Now, so I say, what do you see there, Damien?
Yeah, look, at pretty much what I'm seeing there, Martin, is little small-sided games. Age-related, I'm seeing multiple pitches. I'm seeing coaches assisting and challenging. I didn't hear any roars or any negativity in that clip. But I'm seeing a full pitch or multiple pitches there where every child is playing. I think we're of the habit, if we've odd numbers, there's subs, and I'm hoping in the GA, in the child context, that we're fully gone past that period.
Yeah, well, that's a little clip I got for you, Damien. You're only looking at about quarter of the pitch there. It's on big above in Derry, and I was passing one night and I called in. It's I think a Wednesday night that happens, and no coaches and nobody. You know, the guys up there, they facilitate it, but they don't really organise it. The coaches come in themselves, or the guys over the team, and they play away 6 or 7 or 8 little matches. And you know something, to me, it's what the game is all about. I mean, we need the skills, and we need to work on all the skills and that, and the drills, but put them out there at their own level and let them play away, and the rest will just happen. So anyway, we'll keep it moving. The clock is ticking, as the lad says.
Very good. Here's another slide there that we felt would be important to include. Building confidence and competence as the theme of this presentation. The makers are on the left-hand side. I'd like you to take a second and read through them. And then the breakers on the right-hand side. So what words do you need to incorporate there in your vocabulary going forward, or values, or what sort of words do you need to add to your character on the left-hand side? And what words do we need to eliminate from the right? So, you know, the big ones here, the connection. Are you kind? Are you positive? Are you loyal? Your modesty and your empathy. You know, criticism doesn't belong in the fields anymore when we're coaching children. Bullying doesn't belong. Do you stand up to the bullies? Do you give every child a fair chance? Is there fear? Even through your own language, and we spoke about how we should be speaking to kids in the 6 how to coach skills there earlier. So we just need to be cognizant of the fact that this is important. So we have the makers there, Martin, and the breakers.
Yeah, the one stands out for me there, I mean, is in the breakers, perfectionism. You know, people often talk about, you know, they want things perfect, they want everybody in the field, but it probably doesn't exist. You know, even you're not going to get everyone on your panel at any age into the field every night you want them, and every player is not going to be able to do everything you want them to do. So probably the coach himself or herself are not perfect either. So it's again, I saw the word patience around there somewhere as well, and not looking for perfection. Yes, try and be as good as you can be, and try and keep climbing up the ladder, but be very, very mindful that we're not living in a perfect world. And I suppose the only perfect person I'm looking at him on the screen there at the moment. That's you, Damien.
Well, I'm privileged, Martin. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
So the golden rules then, we're on the last few slides here now, folks. So the golden rules there, I'd like you to take a minute there and go through them yourselves. But, and start with the first one there, the connection before you correct. That's back to how to coach skills there in the earlier slides, and building rapport. First name basis, praise the little child. Do you have a key sentence for every child every night? When you're in your reflective mode there in between coaching sessions, driving the car or going from A to B, and it's going through your head, you might say, I didn't speak to little Johnny there for about 3 weeks. I forgot about little Johnny. And then you go to the field the next night and you have a little positive sentence for him and you G him up. So I think our challenge here on the connect before we correct is having a key sentence for every child every night, and obviously have a key positive sentence. Are there any there, Martin, that jump out at you?
Well, you mentioned there, maybe not having a word for little Johnny there from time to time. Again, Big Johnny is not always spoken to either, and I think anyone coaching older teams should take that on board. So many players come out of the training, come out of the matches, then you might often say, well, what did the coach, what did the manager say to you? Sure, God, he didn't say a word to me for the last month. So, I think out of that list, I would take that somebody in management should have a word for everybody regularly. And I remember being up on meet there at a bit of coaching a couple of years ago, and I was observing it, and I had to come back with a feedback. And the one thing that stood out a mile for me was one coach. He didn't know who I was at the time, and I was just hanging around as they were getting ready. But as every child came to the pitch, he says, how are you, Mikey? How are you, Peter? How are they all getting on in Portumna? How are they getting on down in wherever they were from? And I thought it was brilliant. That little simple thing that he was on first name terms with everybody. I just have to ask you one question there, Damien. What's a congruent coach, if you don't mind me asking you?
Man, Martin, you're always good at the hard questions.
Well, English was great.
Congruent coaches create confident, competent children. My understanding of it is, a coach who's open, a coach who's in harmony, who's in agreement and in harmony with the children on a regular basis there throughout the coaching sessions. So a congruent coach would be somebody who's on the children's level. And there was a great quote there back along, I seem to remember. I'm not so sure who quoted it, but to become, to be a good child coach, you need to become a child and get into the child's world and, have the fun and enjoyment and be working away with them. So the congruent, that's what it would mean to me now, Martin. Maybe other people on the call might have a different interpretation, but openness and in harmony with the children is where I'd be with that.
Well, that sounds good to me. In harmony is the job. So we're in harmony with the clock here now, Damien. So we'll move on to your next little one here. A nice bit of poetry.
Yeah. So look at the last slide of the night there. Is a poem there from Seamus Heaney. I'm not going to read through it. We marked the pitch 4 jackets for 4 goalposts. The reason why we have it up, to be honest, Martin, is it's the simplicity. I think we're too over elaborate when we go coaching children in fields, and I've seen pitches, and I'm not being disrespectful to any coaches, but they're like runways in airports. There's so many bollards down, and go to this corner and go to that. The little child just wants to be left to be a little child. And I understand national school playgrounds at lunchtime, and the teacher, for insurance purposes, circling the building, and they're out and they're walking and they're keeping an eye. But the little child goes out and they pick their own teams and they have their own games, and there's no adult interference. And I've often observed it now in our daily work. you know, the playgrounds at lunchtime or the morning break, if the kids are left free of adults, they're well able to organise themselves. To keep it simple, they're having great fun. They're getting loads of oxygen in. And I just think the essence of that poem there really fits where we're at with where we want our child coaches to be. Keep it simple and make it about the children.
Yeah, well, as you've said it there, Damien, I think that's the essence of hurling. Mark out the pitch there with a couple of jumpers or a couple of school bags, and I think, you know, you said it there in a manner of speaking, that we overrate ourselves sometimes as coaches, and I'm a firm believer in that. If you can generate an atmosphere where the youngsters are going home and they're playing in the gardens and they're playing on the greens, and if there's 6, they're playing 3 aside, if there's 2, they're playing 1 versus 1, they're playing 3 goals and in. If you can generate that kind of an interest, well, you've arrived, and you know the rest will fall into place. So look, folks, I'd like to thank you all for your attendance, and in particular, I would like to thank Damien there for his input and sharing with us some of what's happening in Connacht when it comes to nursery. This is part 1. We will follow up with a part 2, which will focus more on the practical elements of it. What you've seen in this presentation, I suppose, gets us all thinking, and we've got to think, because especially if you're new to coaching. So, Damien, I'd like to thank you again very, very much, and just to flash up a slide there on where there are so many resources available. First of all, on your own Connacht GA Nursery website, there are a huge amount of brilliant resources, and people should go in there and have a look at it. And then secondly, and we'll be using some of them tonight, on the GA Planner, learning.ga.ie/planner, there are literally hundreds of resources for everything from, you know, the nursery, the little games, right up to working on the skills. So Damien, I'll leave the last word to you there.
Look at Martin, we're delighted to be part of the programme, and we threw out a lot of ideas there tonight and a few messages, key messages for coaches. And, you know, if everybody could take 3 or 5 things away from that presentation and commit to making changes in their own in their own coaching sessions, then on the basis of what we've asked. So look at, we appreciate being part of the national programme there as well, and thanks very much for having us, Martin.
Thank you, Damien. Thank you very much.
Okay, folks, thanks indeed to Martin and Damien. Dara Cox back with you here just to go through some of the huge amount of questions that have come in on tonight's presentation, and just to reference as well the huge numbers around the world that are tuned in for tonight's presentation. Wonderful to see. Indeed, we might start in New York with our GPO out in New York, Mickey Quigg, who first of all said thanks for mentioning the home hurling in Derry during the presentation, but also has a question for you, Damien, wondering how important the right size of the hurl is, and do you think it's getting better nowadays, and how we can get parents and coaches to adjust to the right side, holding the hurl on the right side instead of just letting them grow into it.
Yeah, thanks, Dara. How are you, Mickey? I hope all my friends in New York are keeping well. We can't get to you at the minute, but we'll get to you in the near future, please God. Sizing a child's hurley is very important. We'd be advocating to downsize children's hurleys so as technical proficiency can be met. You know, the hurley needs to be an extension of the little child's arm, and if it's too heavy or too long, there's a problem in the child's psyche. And then they try and make the adjustment, and then the technical of how they hold it, like swapping hands or whatnot, comes in. So look at the little hurley is fierce important. I'd often use the analogy, you wouldn't give Rory McIlroy only the clubs, you know, at his level in world golf, that his body is able to adjust to. So why would you give a little child too long of a hurley? And as well as that, I just think parents too, you know, it's not like a pair of shoes now, the hurl. You often go and buy a pair of shoes for a child and you buy them 2 sizes up so as they'll grow into them and they'll have them longer. But if you go with that philosophy with a little child's hurl, the child is going to lose out on maybe 12 months of technical proficiency. So downsizing the child's hurleys is key for me. And yeah, I think, Mickey, as well, the dominant hand is the writing hand, and whatever hand they hold the biro in, that should be the hand held at the top of the hurley. And the science, again, you have to go back to the sports science on nearly everything. Otherwise, it's very subjective in thought. The right hand, the dominant hand, creates a better shot, more power, speed, and accuracy in a stroke, and it gives the little child more control. So I hope they're answered well now for you, Mickey.
Damien, a couple of questions have come in along this theme now. You talked about encouraging the young child and having a little word for every young boy or girl. Discipline has come in a little bit though. Bullying has been mentioned, unruly children, how you can deal with that situation.
Yeah, look at Dara, there's no hard and fast answer here, but I think numbers of coaches supporting the lead coach is vital in a nursery setup or even in a child context with coaching. We have to engage with more parents. Parents come and maybe drop off and go. I think we need to have the communication with the parents and maybe meet with the parents and agree a little group contract there that the best we can deliver for your child will be if we have more help. And I understand all the child protection rules around that. You have the Garda vetting and the Children's First Charter completed, and then the foundation awards. But I would be encouraging in a nursery program for more coaches to be taking part in a support role. There's no reason why one of the mams couldn't stand in there and organise three young lads playing 3 goals in the corner, and the mam could be the referee or the dad. So look at, I understand that it's different as you go up the ages. One head coach or lead coach can take on bigger groups, but it's a different kettle of fish there with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. So the extra help is needed for sure, Dara.
I'm going to group these two questions again, Damien. They're kind of similar. What are the most suitable games to play for 4 to 5-year-olds? And another question, what are the most appropriate styles of coaching for that age group?
Yeah, I might take the second question first. I'd be strong on that opinion now. Democratic style. So it's, openness. Let the children be children. Let them play. Only come in when you're needed to come in. The democratic style would be something that I'd be strong on. Give players their freedom to express themselves. Give little children the freedom. Set up the little structure and give them the freedom to play. Don't be constantly correcting, because if even in an adult's mind there, if someone is correcting you, geez, it makes you feel terrible. Like, am I good at anything would be a question I'd have in my own head, even in an adult's mind and body, if somebody was correcting me constantly. So let them fail, have the patience, but democratic style, give players freedom. And I'd also marry that there, Dara, with compassionate leadership. You have to be approachable. Children have to be able to come up to you and ask you a little foolish question or a little whatever question they have to ask, but you have to be approachable. So compassionate leadership there, married with a democratic style for me, and inclusion of all. We've said it there throughout the presentation, 100% of the children, 100% of the time. So you're putting in your little key challenges for your top third. You have a different set of little key challenges for your middle third. And then the bottom third can't be ignored here now. Is coaches the natural thing to do, and it makes us all feel psychologically better to go ahead with the top third. But our job is to challenge and assist, and where the real need is, and the real need is often with the bottom and middle third.
And just on the games, some options of games, there's great resources on both the GA website and the Connacht GA website.
Yeah, and Martin had those up there in the slides. The Connacht GA coaching programs there. They're all up, the nursery programs, the videos, the voiceovers. There's anything you need there in a coaching context available to you. You just need to go in, research it, spend a little time on it, and pick out the key stuff then that you're going to bring to the field to serve the children on the night. They're the customers, and you've got to keep customers happy. And if you keep your customers happy, they keep coming back to you. So that's your job there as a sales rep, really, in a coaching context. I'd also advocate, Dara, the games-based approach, and you know, it's never too young. We mentioned in the slides there earlier about the national school playgrounds. It's mesmerising to look in there over a wall, or to go in to meet some of the coaches on a weekly basis with work, and just observe the children in their own little games. No one picked the teams. Everyone knows there could be 250 in the national school playground. Everybody is involved. Everybody is doing something. And the teacher's job is just to ensure safety under insurance. So we shouldn't overcoach. And Martin mentioned there earlier as well about the little 3 goals in. So 2 bollards there as goalposts, 2 or 3 meters apart. The goalie releases the ball and player 1 tackles player 2 until they score a goal, and whoever scores the goal then is in goals, and the goalie comes out, and you repeat the process. So those little games-based approaches to coaching, all the learning is in the game. All the learning is in the games-based approach.
I've a question here from Dave Waldron from Roscommon that's certainly very interesting to myself, and I'd imagine a lot of our attendees tonight. What's the best way to teach culture and to get parents to buy into practicing the skills of hurling and camogie at home with their children in what are non-traditional hurling background families?
David, how are you? You couldn't have asked me an easier one, could you? I like that cheat culture bit with regards to trying to improve the players and make them better. Look at Roscommon Gaels have been a brilliant club at this over years. Trying to increase the opportunities to play hurling and increase the participation basis in a big town in a football mad county, and I understand all that. There's no simple answer. I even in my own club in Portumna, we'd still engage with communicating to parents, meet the parents, engage with them, have bi-monthly or monthly meetings with them, encourage them to do this little exercise. Social media now is a great advantage, so a little drill or a routine could be put up there on a club group, and the under 8s or the under 10s or the under 6s could be asked to practice that little routine for the week ahead. So I know it's hard. I honestly don't have all the answers, but what works for us locally, I can only tell my own story, is we do communicate to players, we do communicate to parents, and we do invite the parents in for little meetings for 10 or 15 minutes after a session. And you can only engage with who engages with you. So I wouldn't be over hard on myself, and I know that our job as coaches is to have the hurley in the little child's hands as much as we can. The child bringing the hurley to school, the puck around at lunchtime, as Martin said in his school there, that it was, I don't think they did any basketball or swimming or anything else. It was pucking around there at break times. And we had a brilliant school principal when I was going as well, all them years ago, and it was, brought the hurley to school in the morning, and we belted away, and if it was going well, he'd leave us till 10 to 10, and we'd be out again at 11 o'clock break belting ball. Now I know all this is curtailed with insurance and the modern world, but all I could say, David, is maybe communicate to parents, bring them in, have that little 15-minute chat with them, and if you got 3 or 4, you might ask them to recruit 3 or 4 more, and you build your little pyramid that way. But I understand it's hard, and it's a great question.
A couple of other similar questions from Tyke and Joe. I know you already spoke about the dominant hand being at the top of the hurl, but for the child that is switching or crossing hands as they're trying to develop both sides, is there a simple fix for that?
Do you know, it's a funny one, and Mickey Quigg there, and I think Tyke Brannigan from New York might be on the call. We figured out something when we'd be going to New York there with hurling development clinics. all the kids that had come into you from New York had left hand on top, because in the schools they were trained to play baseball, and every child had the left hand on top. So we were trying to figure out over time what would we do to try and get them onto their more dominant hand from a hurling perspective and trial. So we got little small hurleys, and we gave them the hurley in the right hand as their dominant hand. And the action of throwing up a ball with a little small hurley, I'm talking about a little 18-inch hurley now, like a little tennis racket, and smacking the ball into a fence or against a wall and go back, pick up your ball, start again. And the sports science tells us then that once you have up around 200 efforts, it becomes automatic. So I think it's get onto one hand before the two hands, and go back to building your foundation before you put on your roof. So my message here would be small little hurleys or little tennis racket, get it gripped in the right hand, the dominant hand, the strong hand, and then just get them swinging one-handed for a couple of hundred efforts. And then when you give them their hurley, you'd be surprised at the results. Now this takes time and patience and effort. It won't happen just once off when someone tries it, or they could be lucky. But yeah, that would be a little bit of advice on that. Go back to striking with one hand, Dara, and get onto a smaller hurley, and then you can gradually get onto the hurley that they normally use. But the baseball in America got us onto those thoughts.
As coaches, we've probably all at some stage, rightly or wrongly, told a young boy or a young girl that if they don't get stuck in, they're going to get hurt. It does come naturally though to younger players in particular, standing back, maybe afraid, certainly in the early days. Any advice on how you can help that player out?
Yeah, I think you're back to your thirds there. It's a conversation I had with Cathal Craig during the week. He's our provincial coach and games manager, and we spoke about bio-banding. There's new research coming out, this bio-banding, and what it's basically breaks down to, it's abilities matching. So you can only build a success on a success. So if you've top third players marking top third players, they're going to get the best out of each other. And then you go back to your middle third and have them marking or playing against each other, and then the bottom third again. So what we often have here is we have a bottom third child, through just, we haven't had an awareness of it and we didn't put much thought into it, and then they're marking a top third child. So they have no chance, and there's no chance of a success. So what we have to do in our coaching is build a success first, and from a success you can build future successes. So I'd be strong on the bio-banding, the abilities matching. And another little tip there for working with children is tires, old used car tires. And if you had them, and they can go and they can strike individually on the tire. And then if there's another boy matching off with them on the other side of the tire, you're creating a little comfort zone and a cushion, and you're building in a psychological safety there. And then eventually they can get into competing for what we want them to do, striking a sliotar. But again, there's a big message here coming through all night. Go back and meet the little child where the child is at, and that's your starting point.
A question from John O'Dwyer, an interesting one. Are clubs, especially small clubs, missing a chance to develop both teams at the same time, where underage hurling and camogie seem to train separately? I assume from football he means. Is there any reason that all that, particularly nursing age coaching, should not be done at the same time, or at least in conjunction with one another?
Look, John, you're a man after my own heart. Fair play to you. The little girls are as important as the little boys, and at nursery age, I'd be all for matching them in and mixing them up. And I think the maturation levels for the little girl get out of hand when the boy goes into the teenage years. So when they leave national school, there might be a mismatch there in physique, and there could be hurt caused or injury caused if the boy was marking a girl. But definitely at nursery program, John, we'd be 100% for that. And I think not enough clubs put enough thought into it. And there's dads there leading nursery programs, and they have girls and boys, but psychologically or it's built into the psyche because it's the GEA. Oh, geez, we only take the lads on this now, and the girls have to go to a separate pitch and do separate coaching. But I think Martin has, in 2 weeks' time there, Martin has a programme there. He's going to be working with Schlock Neal, and you will get a lot of insight there, how they develop the boys and the girls equally, and how they develop the football and the hurling and the camogie and the ladies football equally. But yeah, John, I think there's big opportunities in missed there, and somebody needs to stand up now and bring it all together. And you know, the insurance thing can't be the argument. So you know, I think it's very valid, and I'd be fully for what you're suggesting.
In relation, Damien, to the 100% of the kids, 100% of the time, what's your opinion on a particularly strong boy or girl moving up a grade if they're capable of doing so?
Well, it's funny, David Coleman, he's a child psychologist. He lives in O'Gunnell on Clare. He's nationally well renowned, David. David, I've been at a few talks. David speaks about the zone of proximal learning. And what's meant by the zone of proximal learning is that you challenge a child a level or two above what their ability level is now to bring out the best of them and keep and have self-improvement. So if there's a very strong kid in an under 6 age group, you know, you'd be very wrong as a coach that he couldn't at least spend a night with the 7s or the 8s. But I still think he needs to be back with his under 6 group as well, because, you know, sometimes little children get ideas about themselves. I'm better than my own age group, and I'm going to be playing with the bigger lads. So I think just to keep that grounded, for sure, they should be with the age group above within rule. But I would be advocating that they keep the contact as well there with their own age group, in the interest of fairness, and even for themselves not to be, you know, sort of bullied or verbally jibed about it.
Damien, I'm going to give you a break for 1 second because there's a question here I'm going to direct at Martin, going a little bit off script here, but Martin, if you don't mind, because I think this is something that you might have an opinion on. A comment has come in saying that if the hurley's too long, there's a higher risk of a young player switching hands, and that hurleys that are too long are lethal, is what this attendee tells us. What's your thoughts on that though, Martin?
Come on, Dara, I wasn't supposed to be answering any questions here tonight, but look, it depends on where he's from. If the Tip boys or the Cork lads, or the Galway boys, work away with the short hurls. But do I look at it as, look at the hurl has to be manageable. It has to be light enough that you can manoeuvre it. And but I always believe if the hurl is too short, there's a huge amount of ball you can't reach. And if the hurl is a decent size, you can always shorten it. You can shorten a long one, but you can't lengthen a short one. But again, we have a little poster out there now that kind of gives guides on that. And if anybody sends me an email separately, I can send them a picture of it. You know, obviously it can't be too long, it's in your way. But when we were growing up, one of the first skills you learned was how to shorten the hurl. You know, you can reach for the block, you can reach for the hook, you can reach for the flick. And then if there's a player on, you just shorten up the hurl, tidy it up and back of the net. So, as it says, let some of our biggest rivals carry on there with the little short hurls, okay? Come on, Dara, thanks for that.
Thanks, Martin.
And just, Dara, if you don't mind coming in, myself and Martin, we travel a lot with work, and we spend a bit of time together on and off over a period of the year. And, you know, we came to a consensus there that for sure you downsize a child's hurley. But we're seeing now that there's too many youths, 13, 14 through minors, using too small of a hurley now as well. You know, there's a time when the hurley has to catch up with your body, and as Martin said, you can make it shorter if it's long, but you can't make it longer if it's short. So what I just like for you know, clarity here, the children's hurley should be downsized for technical proficiency, but once they get competent and confident, they need to go on to the proper size hurley. We see minors there when we're traveling, you know, the province or the country, and Jesus, they're using little kippens. So it's and they're very talented, skillful hurlers, but they have nothing to protect themselves in their hands, and it's important there that they get onto the right size. And it's hard now on a conference call here or a webinar to show exactly, but there is a way of putting into context the correct size of a hurley, and it's not the old mitts up to your hip and the pocket of your trousers and all that crack. So you know, we can go through that for people again, but as Martin said there, Martin brought out a brilliant little booklet there on the size of the hurley, and that's available there for anyone to get, and we can obviously get it out to you there if you email in.
Just cutting in there, Dara, if you don't mind, just harping back to the question you had from New York about, you know, the baseball grip. Declan Sherlock there coaching up in Donegal and up around Tyrone, the lads up there have developed a little game, and they call it the wristy, which is exactly, Damien, the little hurl that you're talking about, the little 18-inch hurl, and they play away with the one hand. Declan has some lovely videos on him, and must try and get him, but it kind of is, it's exactly what you were speaking about there, Damien, so just to give you a note of that.
Thanks, Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Another little tip that came in here as well from another attendee, just offered it up as well, is in one particular nursery that they put wristbands on the strong hand of each of the young hurlers, so as they're able to go around, they can spot and fix. So thanks for that little tip as well. That's a good one. A question in from Cathal Moran, an old friend of yours from Portumna, Damien. Do you have any advice for coaches of children on a team underage in disconnecting the parents, I guess, from being the coaches, where the coaches are allowed the freedom, I guess, to work with the children without the parents offering their opinion every couple of minutes, I suppose?
Cathal, how are you? I believe you're up in Sligo somewhere, Enniscrone or Western Gales, I think, was the last time I checked in with you. Now, maybe you've moved on from there. But if you're up in West Sligo there, we'd have to ask Dara Cox to take on that for you. But look, it's a problem for sure, Cathal. You want support and assistance from the parents, but you don't want them taking over either. And it is very definitely a problem with, you know, with the children. You know, we're here for the children. We're coaching for the children. We're there to improve and challenge and assist the children. And if you know, an over enthusiastic mum or dad are over enthusiastic, it curtails what the child can do, and it fits into the child's psyche, and it brings them a little bit backwards and makes them, you know, a little bit annoyed and creates a little bit of anxiety inside them. So yeah, I think no more than David Waldron's question earlier, I think that's a communication thing. And you know, Martin Fogarty probably taught me this, were they ever asked? And even with David Waldron's question there from Roscommon Gales earlier, you know, how do we bring in more people? Now, I know it's not a smart question back, but have we asked them? And you know, were they made part of this? And then, you know, I think, you know, you won't get 100% of them in, but if you were to get 10% of them in, you'd have a lot more help than having no percent of them in. So maybe a communication, your little meeting for 15 minutes after. I like to mention group contracts, and if parents could collaborate with you and buy in, and you could have this little chat, and you're not asking them to sign up to anything, but you are asking them for their goodwill, and you are asking them for their, you know, their assistance in a positive way. And we all go into a bit of lunacy when a ball is thrown in, and especially if your child is playing and all that sort of thing. So, you know, I think we should have a little charter there and draw up a little group contract with the parents and get everyone to buy in and be one, you know, collective team on all this, as opposed to the coach trying to do stuff and being totally frustrated.
Cathal tells us he's in Kildare now, so obviously there was no disruptive parents in Sligo. He's happy enough with it. So.
They're out of our jurisdiction now.
Damien, Eamon O'Shea is on tomorrow night in the GA webinar, to the Tipperary senior team coach, and he's always great to listen to. I remember when we had him up in Connacht, and he gave a lesson for us. He spoke about how much he loves to see a little bit of chaos, albeit probably organised chaos. But would you agree that chaos is a good thing in a nursery? Certainly.
Yeah, I give them freedom to play. It's back to being a democratic coach. Give them the freedom and let it happen. And okay, look, you have to be firm and fair, and it has to be managed to an extent. But we expect a little bit too much, Dara, at times, and we overcoach, we get frustrated ourselves because they're not able to do what we want them to do. You could have patience and go back and meet them where they're at and let it all happen. And this is a journey, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So Eamon O'Shea has been a friend of ours in coaching for a long time now, and he's been arriving down to the Connacht GA Centre in Beacon more recently with Martin Fogarty on the provincial coaching workshops. So look at if Eamon O'Shea has said that, I don't think there's many that's going to argue. And just Dara, if we could just explain there, I missed out on it there earlier. I was trying to get my thoughts together. A games-based approach to coaching. We always go into a field with children, and the first thing we do is run a drill or have a warm-up, and then we have skills and drills, and then we get into a game and it's nearly over. Children come to the fields to play, so give them the game in the first 30 seconds. Break up your teams, top third, middle third, bottom third, 5v5s. If 30 is an even number, do your own maths, and have the 5v5 games across the pitch or whatever, multi-pitches, little, at appropriate size for the age group. And then after 7 minutes, freeze the game and fix the skill. And what I mean by that there is, if you're head coaching, have 3 referees on 3 separate pitches, and after 7 minutes you just blow the whistle and say, okay, coaches, for the next 5 minutes we're going to coach the high catch. There was no high catch in any of those games for the last 5 minutes or 7 minutes. So the coaches then will be able to, if there's 10 in their group, it's a manageable number for a coach, and they coach the high catch. And then after 5 minutes, after fixing the skill, you play the game again. And you just keep that pattern going over the night, and you might get in 1 part skill, 2 part game, 1 part skill, 2 part game. So we need to be top heavy on games, because all the learning is done through the games. So again, play the game, freeze the game, fix the skill, and play the game. So the games-based approach, again, is small-sided games. A game is 1v1. A game is 2v2. A game is 3v2. We sort of are of the psyche that, there's 28 in the pitch. We're going to play 14 aside. So we need to stop that way of thinking, and the children learn best with little small-sided games. Again, back to the bio-banding on ability levels.
Thanks to everyone that's been sending us in questions tonight. We've gone through the vast bulk of them. We might just finish up with 1 or 2 more questions from Aidan asking Damien, if you have 5 or 6 children that are ready to progress to a new skill, but maybe there's another few that aren't just there yet, should you keep at that same drill until they can all move forward together, and then you're running the risk, I guess, of stronger players getting bored, or if you do progress it, of a child getting left behind?
Yeah, it's another very good question. I'd probably say, we all go to school and we do maths, and you have your A-level maths student, and you have your B's and your C's, and someone who mightn't be any good at maths. So, are we going to hold back the guy who's able to go forward because of the guy who can't get it, or the girl? So what I would say here is, go back to David Coleman, the child psychologist, the zone of proximal learning. Meet the child with a challenge a level or 2 above where they're at. Because we did say earlier, if you don't give the child the challenge, you don't maintain the stimulation, and then the disconnection happens. So if we want connection to keep persisting through our coaching, we need to meet the challenge that the child needs, and we need to meet their stimulation levels to keep them challenged and keep them connected. So, I'd see nothing wrong with little bottom third child. They're doing a little drill with a beanbag, but the little top third child is doing the same little routine with a smart touch sliotar. We shouldn't pigeonhole kids into little spots that they're all the same, and everybody should recognise the fairness in that. Move with the child when the child is able to move, but go back and meet the needs of the child that isn't. And the time you give to the kids that need your help more will be, the making or breaking of the club going forward.
Okay, I think we'll finish up on this one, Damien, before we hand back to Martin, and it actually brings us right back around to where these webinars started with Martin last week speaking about planning. The question is, how come so many nursery coaches only turn up at the time or just 5 minutes beforehand? Because it's just the small lads or the small lassies, I'm sure. Should there not be equally good planning for a nursery session, Damien?
Yes, look at best practice would say that you have to give your little customer there as much time as you give your big customer. But look at, I understand that too. Jay's volunteer people in clubs and they're rushing, busy in their day jobs, and they're bursting themselves to get to the field even. So look at, as much as you can for sure. Nursery, if I was delivering a nursery program session, it'd challenge me a lot more than if I was delivering a session with our minors or even our senior hurlers. It should nearly come more automatic to me. But the night you'd be delivering a little nursery program session, it would take a little bit more thought and planning. And again, there's the little hurdles and little jumps and little ladders, because as we learned earlier, nursery program coaching isn't just the hurley and the ball. You have to develop their little feet. So have you ladders, jumping in and out of a ladder, jumping across a hurley, the running, the jumping, the throwing, the agility, the balance, the coordination. So there's lots of little challenges in a nursery program. And we mentioned earlier there too, Dara, about speed. 7 and 8 year olds is the window of opportunity, according to the sports science, for developing speed, footfall speed in a child. So are we meeting that need at that age? So, it takes a little bit more planning, but again, lads and ladies on the call, there's an amount of resource out there, and it's there. It's there for your benefit. If you could just go in and research it again on the Connacht GA website or the nationallearning.ga.ie planner. Everything you need to know is there. You don't have to invent anything new. And maybe the last thing I would say, Dara, is the station learning. It's a vital tool. So, to meet the little child's challenge and the stimulation, you can't have them doing anything for longer than 7 or 8 minutes because they're bored, they're gone. And even when you're given key sentences to children, the new information coming. We learned this from Tony O'Gregan there, who's involved a lot in sports psychology and is very, very good at what he does in that area. 7 or 8 seconds is the attention you have. So can you give your message to that little group in 7 or 8 seconds? Because if you're a coach who loves the sound of your own voice, you've lost your audience. If you can't give your key sentence and your key message in 8 seconds, it's over for you. So we're saying here more action than talking. And the station learning is fabulous, because you could have a little drill in the corner for 4 or 5 minutes to develop the little child's hands, and then they blow the whistle and they move to the next station, and their little feet are being developed. And then the third station could be a little game, 3 goals in, 1v1 with a goalie, and then they move back around to station 4, whatever your invention in station 4 is. So station learning is very good, and you need a little bit of help with it. But again, if you're the lead coach and you have 3 or 4 people with you, the station learning is the key.
Okay, Damien, thanks very much, and thanks to everyone that asked questions tonight as well. Martin.
Dara, thanks a million for your own input again. Much appreciated. And Damien, thank you. Wonderful to listen to you there tonight. And I always enjoy going up to Connacht there and watching your expertise. And I suppose I'd single out there your colleague Jerry Spellman. I've learned so much over the years watching you in action. The nursery end of it is so important. It's probably the most important area of the hurling. So we still have hundreds of people logged in here. You must have no homes to go to. But just before we finish, I'd like to just harp back to there what Dara and Damien, both of you, have referenced the Connacht website there for resources and learning.ga.ie. And I suppose people don't realise the amount of knowledge, the amount of resources that are up there. I'd like to pay a tribute to some of my colleagues there, Jimmy Darcy and David Sweeney in Croke Park, for the hundreds of hours that they give putting those resources together. And I suppose another person up there in Croke Park that you people in Nursery will be coming across is Pat Culhan, who runs the Go games. And you know, these are all developments that have come to the fore in recent years that weren't around when I was young. And so much credit due to people that are looking after those. Things. So look at finally to everybody from around the world, we have a huge turnout tonight. And again, we mentioned all the countries, the people abroad that tuned in last week and are tuned in again tonight. So we hope you're getting something from it. And so the last word would just be, if you don't log on and listen to Eamon O'Shea tomorrow night, well, you're going to miss something. Now I know he's a Tipperary man, but he's the top coach in Ireland at the moment, All-Ireland champion. So you know, knowing Eamon, whether you're involved in Nursery or you're involved in an adult senior team, you're going to pick up a few excellent nuggets. So take care, and hopefully we'll see you all again. And thanks, Dara, and a big thank you to Damien. Take care.
Thanks very much, Martin and Dara.